You're listening to the Entrepreneur Ignited podcast, where we aim to simplify online business so you can make more money. Now, here's your host, Derek Gehl.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Ignited podcast. This is your host, Derek Gehl, and today's guest, I've heard him referred to as one of the smartest internet marketers you've never heard of. And after getting to know him over the past couple of years, I would tend to agree with that. Now, he's one of the founders and what I call sort of the genius mind behind a company called Noble Samurai. And that company's been developing internet marketing software for online businesses for it's got to be close to a decade. And one of the main pieces of software I can still continue to use on a weekly basis. I've trained thousands of people how to use it, and that's Market Samurai, one of the most popular and powerful keyword research tools available today. But today we're not going to be talking about keyword research. Instead, we are going to be diving into a strategy that he has been immersed in for the last few years, and that is content marketing. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Eugene Ware to the show. Eugene, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Derek.
Fantastic. So, before we get started, just give me your background, give me your story. How did you end up where you are today? How did you get into this building internet marketing software and tools now that have literally hundreds of thousands of users?
It's a long story, but the short version kind of goes like I'm actually from a software development background, went through the whole .com boom and worked in Silicon Valley and did a bunch of that kind of stuff. And then one day I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad and thought, hang on, this is working for other people sort of thing that kind of sucks, and I should probably use my skills towards sort of creating products. So I did that and failed like miserably, and then realized that the missing sort of part of the formula, so to speak, was you can have the world's best product in the world, but without good sales and good marketing, all that sort of counts for nothing. So I then sort of embarked on a very long journey on sort of learning sort of copywriting and sales and marketing and online marketing. That basically put me on the road that took me to build products like Market Samurai. And the story behind Market Samurai was just that was in that kind of pursuit of how do I create a product that's going to sell? And part of that, the answer to that was doing some really good market research, and the result of that is the Market Samurai product that a lot of people know and love.
Yeah, and when did you first launch Market Samurai?
Goes back in it launched to the public in 2008, but the sort of technology and the ideas behind it were developed years and years before then. We actually had an internal tool that we're using for a bunch of SEO consulting and also just internal stuff for internal projects and stuff that we were doing. So yeah.
Wow, in this world of online marketing, a piece of software that still exists after 7 years, that is still being updated, it's still one of the best out there. Honestly, I think that's just a reflection on what you've created in your company, because you've been in this industry long enough. I've watched most software, has a very short lifespan before either they get bored of it, it dies off or just stops getting updated. And I found that amazing. Even today, here in my office, I was hooking up one of my team members with Market Samurai where, we use it all the time. And, so I just want to give you a kudos, because that's, it's incredible what you guys have created there. And I wish more software companies operated like you did in terms of not just software quality, but your support as well. So, so there you go. Just want to talk you up a little bit there, because I think you guys have created some awesome stuff.
Thanks, Derek. I mean, one thing I actually left out of my story was the very, very first exposure to internet marketing courses was your and Corey's internet insider secrets course.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's actually how I got started in the whole online marketing. So that was kind of our little Bible. We had the huge folder and worked through it. And we learned about email marketing and autoresponders and all the stuff that we still use today. So
Yeah.
talk about being around for a while.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome, man. So let's dig in here. Now, over the past year, you've been focused on content marketing and developing solutions for marketers using content marketing. And we'll talk about that later in the tool you've created. But what I really want to do here on this interview is dig into your wealth of knowledge on content marketing and what you've learned developing this software, working with different content marketers. And so let's just start at the beginning. Just to make sure everybody listening is on the same page. So here's one simple question to start with, and that is, what is content marketing and why does it matter?
Okay. So content marketing, these days, I actually think just is marketing. I think it's what marketing has evolved to be. So, content marketing is, instead of, say, doing a lot of paid advertising and running ads and, all the sort of traditional forms of marketing and sales, it's actually, basically entering into a conversation with your marketplace and looking at, well, what are the pain points? What are the things that my target market is interested in? And putting out really, really fantastic content that, addresses those questions. And attracting, your target marketing and creating a relationship, so that they become familiar with you and they create that trust with you as a company and as a brand, which then sort of opens up the room to talk about your products and services in relation to answering their problems. So probably could put a bit more concisely, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. So it's very different. It's often referred to as part of inbound marketing, which is, instead of, it's the customer looking for problems and finding you, as opposed to kind of you going out there necessarily and finding your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it is definitely the core segment, I think, of inbound marketing. And that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to define it, is because there's so many marketing terms out there. It can be difficult to figure out which is which. Now, here's, the number one challenge that I see people facing with content marketing today. And that's this. Now, if we go back in time, back to the early days of when we were starting off, content was really about, writing an article. That was it, really. I mean, you'd write an article, you'd post on your website. And in the early days, it wasn't even a blog. It was literally a page, right? And so it was really just about written content. But now what's happened over the past, I'm going to say really it's been the last 5 to 7 years, there's all these different mediums to push your content out over. So it's no longer about just an article. You can do everything from videos to slide sharing to images to all these different things. So what people are running into now is, how do I leverage all these platforms efficiently and still have time to, sleep and eat, right? Because there's so many different types of content you can create. So, let's start with, I guess, another general question related to this, and that is, as a small business or a solo entrepreneur with limited resources, how can you be successful with content marketing? How can you leverage all these platforms? What as you see it are the keys to success with content marketing?
Okay, so I think the very first thing, just with content marketing, I won't spend too much time in it, but it's kind of the bedrock that content marketing is built on. I think the first thing is quality, right? And it's one of the pivots, I think, that's kind of happened over the last, as I said, for 5 years, is that a lot of people used to just produce of text-based articles for their websites and try to effectively game the search engines, write content for search engines as opposed to human beings. And, that just doesn't work anymore, and certainly not as effectively as it did, sort of 10 years ago. So, you need to write content for human beings and have super high quality content that's really, really engaging for people. And that this actually gets measured now. It gets measured by the search engines. It gets measured by YouTube and all the different kind of platforms and Facebook. If people aren't actually actively engaging with your content, liking your content, watching your content, spending lots of time with your content, then that's a massive signal to all the different platforms out there that your content is not very good and therefore they don't rank it so highly. So that's kind of the bedrock. Because I know a lot of people, particularly in the internet marketing space, are still sort of in this, when they look to apply what we're going to talk about in terms of applying leverage to their content, they effectively just take the same rubbishy content that they've been producing in the past and then just trying to, spew it out all over the internet and effectively spam the web and sort of clog up the tubes, as they say. So that's, you need to start with the basis of quality. So I won't harp on that sort of, anymore. But that being said, once, if you've actually got some you've got something to say, you've got some really good quality content, then I think as an individual who doesn't have a lot of time, doesn't have a lot of money, and wants to be everywhere and wants to get the best bang for buck, I think the key thing is being really, really smart about your content and looking at how can I get the maximum bang for buck for my content. So, for example, so to take sort of a single piece of content and be able to sort of quickly turn that into video, into audio, into text and blog posts, because that stuff still works, into slide decks and things, but do that in an intelligent way. So one of the ways that you can kind of do that, you can do this absolutely kind of today. There's kind of two ways to go about it. I guess I'll talk about the traditional way of doing this. It's probably what what you yourself and a lot of people, and certainly what my background has sort of been in today in terms of how it's traditionally done. I guess, and I'll talk about how a smart way to kind of go about it today. So traditionally, what you can kind of do is you could, like, say you've got an idea for an article, and if you want to be like super leveraged about it, you can like do like a little mind map or some bullet points or something, and just effectively record yourself, talking about a particular topic. If you're the expert about the topic, this is a really, really great way to come up with really, really good content. So you would go through a mind map or some bullet points about the content, record yourself doing that. Then you can take that recording, get it transcribed. You might even get an outsourcer to edit that transcription into a really high quality article for you. So now you've got the audio, you've got the text. You might get an outsourcer to add some images and stuff for that blog post. You might get an outsourcer to go and then take that that edited article and even turn that into a PowerPoint presentation, for example, with lots of pretty kind of images, and then you might even get an outsourcer to take that PowerPoint presentation and that audio and time them together and create a video. And so from a single input of you spending a few minutes, recording yourself talking about a topic, through leveraging systems and outsources and those kinds of systems, you can take that single piece of content, you can end up with audio, a blog post, a slide deck which you can upload to SlideShare. You end up with video that can go to YouTube, and then you can also build up systems for your team. You're outsourcing your team or people from Fiverr or however you're getting this done, to then syndicate that stuff to be in all places. So that's kind of the traditional way, and I call that the top-down sort of approach, which is starting with you as the expert and just recording in a very very, very sort of quick way of getting this stuff, and then sort of going to your outsources and then getting content there. So that's the traditional way, and that and it's still an excellent way, particularly if you've got money and you don't have a lot of time. It can be a very, very highly leveraged way to get content out. So that's starting with effectively some bullet points or an article or something, and you effectively producing content from audio. But the downsides of that is that it does take a bit of money. You do need to to pay all your team members or do this kind of stuff yourself. It's the other way to do it. I wouldn't recommend it doing it yourself. It takes it's not a very good use of your time. You're better off using the money to get that sort of stuff done. And you need to find people and train them up and build the systems. And you're building this kind of pipeline. It does take some time.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to chime in there. I was going to chime in there and say, it absolutely does. And I'll just give an example. Effectively, that's what I do with this podcast, right? So, for everybody that's listening, what Eugene's talking about here. First of all, just to summarize, it's about taking one piece of content and building a process that takes that content and leverages it by pushing it out across multiple different mediums and multiple different formats. And so just to sort of share an example with this podcast, after this podcast is done, I take the raw recording, I give it to the team takes it, they transcribe it, that transcription then turns into an article, the article then has graphics created for it, we convert it to a video file, we put it out on YouTube, it heads out to SoundCloud, it heads out to iTunes, we embed it on the website, so all those elements. Now, the one downside, as Eugene just said, there is a cost to doing that. But I mean, you can do it relatively cost effectively, but it does take time. Now I'm writing some questions down here as we go, and I don't want to derail where you're at because this is awesome, and I mean you're just spewing good content everywhere, like good information. I want to take one step back though, and I want to talk about quality for a second. And because you started talking about quality, and I think quality is one of those areas that really gets people caught up and stuck because, first of all, let me ask you a question. How do you create quality? What do you consider quality?
I think there's different aspects to it. Okay, so I think the ultimate thing about quality is that you actually deliver someone an outcome. That people that are engaging with your content, they had a problem, and after engaging with that content, you've solved that problem, you've answered that kind of question. So that I think that is that's kind of the bare bones sort of side about quality. And then on top of that, then you can overlay some other dimensions such as like passion. If you're passionate about even just the most, I know there's a guy who's like on the web who is passionate about raising chickens in his backyard. It sounds like it's kind of crazy thing, but he's totally into that, right?
Yeah.
And he creates all these videos and these courses and all that kind of stuff. And you see this guy's content, and this passion just it just exudes like in all the content. And part of that makes it really, really engaging because he actually kind of cares about the stuff that he's doing. And he injects, part of passion is also be able to inject your personality into it. And you are everyone is unique, and the degree to which you can inject your personality, your style into your content can really, really lift it and really feel like there's a real person behind this content that is interesting, that you want to get to know, that engenders trust. And then I guess the last point, which is probably why people get kind of hung up a little bit about it, is to do with uniqueness, right? And so like a lot of just being different, having a slightly different take on something, and like one of the things which our mutual friend Steve McKnight who's into property investing, real estate investing, when he first sort of got into online, I mean, his particular slant or tilt towards sort of content was positive cash flow investing, which probably sounds really silly to a lot of your American investors because everything seems to be positive cash flow over there. But in Australia, everything's negative cash flows. We call it negative gearing over here. And, that was his like unique sort of tilt or angle on it. So I think they're the different kind of dimensions about it. But I think, the aspects of passion and personality and things, I think anyone can bring that to content, particularly. And I think if you're in business and you're not passionate about what you do, it's going to be really, really hard to do that. And I think that's one of the advantages of using like a platform such as video. Like I talked about how, one of the things I studied very early on, I think it's super important, is copywriting. And I still believe that every piece of content that you create is a sale. You might not be selling them to buy your product, but you're selling them to spend their time to read your content, and that is, people's time is actually more valuable, than money in a lot of contexts. So I think you need to sell them on that. And so originally, when it came to writing articles and things, I was very, very focused on almost writing it like a sales letter. Trying to make it engaging, short sentences, opening with kind of questions and, keeping the flow going through the article and that kind of stuff. And that, that whole copywriting thing and that writing thing is, it's a skill. It's really hard to learn to do that kind of effectively. One of the awesome things about video and audio, and you can tell that if you're listening to this podcast, is that you've got your voice behind it. Right. And with your voice, you can convey, excitement or anger or emotion, and so you can convey your emotion and your passion and your personality just through your voice. You don't need to be an incredible copywriter anymore. You can just speak, with passion, and if you're talking about something that you're passionate about, that'll just happen naturally. So a lot of the copywriting aspects are still important, but they're less so if you actually care or passionate about your product. So that's a very, very long answer to quality, but
it was a huge answer, but it was a perfect answer. And a couple things I want to just re-highlight there, because I see this happen all too often. Somebody creates content just for the sake of creating the content, and maybe it does provide an outcome, but there's absolutely zero personality or zero voice in it. And it's like reading a textbook. Okay. And so, personality is so important. If you want people to really engage with your content, engage with your business, having a personality or a voice in your content is super, super critical. Now, one of the other points I kind of want to bring up here, because this is one of the roadblocks I see people hit, is realizing that every piece of content you write does not need to be original thought. All right. And this is the mistake I see so many people make, as they start off and they're like, okay, I got to write a blog post. What like groundbreaking, earth-shattering thing am I going to write about? And, they're afraid to, reuse content or, just to talk about stuff that's already being talked about. And so, if I could throw one piece of advice out there for people that are creating content, there's a ton of different ways to create content, to leverage other people's content, to take an article and rewrite it in your own voice or your own opinion, or give an opinion on something. So I guess one of the messages I want to throw out there for those people that are just starting down the content marketing road, don't overthink the complexity of the content that you are creating, because it doesn't have to be super complex. And having an outcome is super key. And to what you said there, Eugene, I think an outcome that solves a problem, keep it simple, keep it focused on one outcome, and then also tying in different copywriting principles, right? Again, people are like, well, I don't want to sell in my article. I don't want to sell in my in my my blog post, and that's fine. But look, here's my theory: if you create a good piece of content that somebody lands on your website, they engage with it, they read it, they feel like they got some value out of it, and then you don't give them any other steps to learn more, to be part of something, to engage with you, whether it's an opt-in or subscribe to a podcast or whatever that may be, you're doing them a disservice. So
absolutely.
There needs to be some level of a call to action at the end to engage more. And so for everybody listening, don't worry about not selling, because you're not. If you're giving people value for free, they're going to want to engage with you more. And that's where you need to get them over the line to take that next step of engagement with you. And back to your point, Eugene, this is where, a lot of these copywriting principles do come into place. But the other thing I couldn't agree with you more on is when you're doing it through audio or video, it becomes much, much easier. Doing it with just words is so much more difficult than, as you said, doing it with video or audio, where we get to convey emotion and people can feel excitement as opposed to just trying to express it through words. So anyway, I wanted to go back to quality because, again, quality, I think, is misunderstood. People think it has to be some groundbreaking, every piece of content has to be original thought. And that's not what we're talking about when it comes to quality, right? We're talking about good quality, good outcome, passion, personality, stuff like that. So, okay, so back to what you were talking about, Eugene, and so let's step back forward, because you were sort of in that whole leverage arena, okay, and how to leverage content. And so I'm trying to figure out what point I pulled us back. Do you recall?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about there was kind of two ways to go around sort of about leverage, and one is to kind of record the content, like from an audio or video, like we certainly do this. It's a really, really great way to create products. Do a little mini sort of seminar and just go through some course materials, and then you've got the video and you can kind of chop that up and to turn that into like a product, all that kind of stuff. But effectively starting with audio or video as the initial way to record and capture that kind of content, and then have a pipeline to turn that into video and audio and text and blogs, or even products and DVDs, or whatever. That's kind of the traditional pipeline, and I still use that. A lot of people still use that. I think it's super effective. And if you are the expert, like, I think it is a super, and you're very comfortable about talking like through points, and you've got those kind of skills, then I highly recommend that. That's I call it the top-down approach. The second approach, which I think is really interesting, is rather than starting with audio and video initially and then going through that pipeline, is starting with text. So starting with an article. It could be an article that you've written if you're the product expert, an article your team has written, or you've got an outsourcer to do. But you start with the same kind of high quality content, but as text, and looking at how can I apply a pipeline to that text to turn that into both audio and video and slides and that kind of thing. It seemed so. So let's just talk about how you would do that. So you take your article, could be a blog post that's already on your blog or an article, right? And then you might read, you might record the audio of yourself reading out the article. Okay, great. Now you've got the audio. It probably is actually going to be better audio, because if you start with a a nicely sort of formatted article, then you don't have all the ums and the ahs and all that kind of stuff. Maybe a bit less personality, but if it's your article, it's not a problem, right? And then you might take that text, and then you might use that text, or the key points of that text, and turn that into a PowerPoint slide deck, right? And create some nice images and format some text to make it really nice and pretty, right? And then you can time that audio to that PowerPoint presentation, and then you get your video. You've got your PowerPoint deck, so you've got your slides, so you can leverage that into SlideShare and those kind of platforms. So you've accomplished the same thing, but you've started with text as the sort of the initial kind of input, and then you put it through this pipeline to get all these other artifacts that you can be all over the place as well. Now, the interesting thing is if you do that, there's a lot of advantages. One is that you can actually automate that entire pipeline. So you can have you can write some software to take that article and to break it up and to create slides, and you can select images and record audio and video, and you can actually create some software to automate that, which is what we did with our product called sort of Content Samurai. And so that you don't need to use the software to do that, because it's exactly the same sort of process. But that's the interesting thing if you go about it from the other way.
Awesome. Okay, so basically we've got a couple different strategies, processes that you've walked people through for creating content across all those different sort of mediums. And so now let's shift gears again, and let's talk about once you've created that content. Yes. It used to be about just throwing it up on your website.
Yes.
But that's not the case anymore. It's really about distribution and getting it out there in front of as many eyeballs as possible on all these different platforms. And it feels like every day there's a new bloody platform popping up that we have to start paying attention to. So distribution. People that are starting out, I've created my article. I've used this strategy that you've shared with us, whether it's top down or bottom up. I've created a piece of content. Now what do I do with it? Okay.
So it used to be in the old days that, you would put all your content on your own website and then kind of build it and they will come sort of mentality. And, that still works to a degree, but, if you're doing that you're missing out on a huge slice of the pie, of the traffic pie. These days, what you want to do is you want to go to where people are. Where are people spending their time? And that means being on all these different various social networks. It means being on YouTube and and Vimeo and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and all these kind of different platforms out there, to be where the traffic sort of is. And the way I look at content is that you're creating an asset, right? You're doing this bit of work once, and hopefully you're doing it in a leverage way, so you can have all these different bits of audio and video, doing the work once, right? And then over time, that asset that you build is going to be paying you back through traffic, through sales. Sorry, I'm just having a few computer problems here. I was recording stuff here. I've just filled up my hard disk. So
good.
Good. Awesome.
No, you know what, guys? It's an organic interview. This is what happens. Technical issues. And the IT genius just filled up his hard drive. Let's see how quickly he can solve it.
That's right. I think we're good now. So, okay. So one way to think about this, and I guess, this is just the way I kind of think about it, is if you ask yourself, why is Microsoft or Apple or one of these huge tech companies, why are they worth billions and billions of dollars, right? There's obviously a lot of answers depending on, your kind of perspective about this. When I actually started this in terms of business strategy, the one way I like to look at it is that, say a company like Microsoft, they were able to capture a percentage of, say, the desktop PC market years and years and years ago, in the 80s and stuff. And whatever that percentage they were able to keep, in Microsoft it was a very, very large percentage, but even if it was 30 or kind of 40% of, that market, if they were able to keep that same percentage, but the entire market grew exponentially, then suddenly their business, which is worth hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars, would would grow with the market to become billions of dollars, right? So and if you look at any multi-billion-dollar sort of company, that story is there. Like even Airbnb and all these kind of platforms, right? They start out really, really small and capturing a percentage of that particular market, and as that market grows exponentially, right, they get to benefit from that. And that's what venture capitalists and all that kind of stuff do, is they're looking for people to create startups in exponentially growing markets that can have the potential to become a billion-dollar sort of business, right? So using that sort of principle, that's actually why it's important to be on all these kind of different platforms. Because if you got into, even say Google, right? Google, even when Google was really, really young and not many people knew about it. If you had a really, really great website with great content and, were the best piece of content on a particular kind of keyword, over time, then as more and more people come on the internet, right? If you're able to hold that number one position on Google for that particular keyword, then as more people come on the internet, you exponentially get more traffic. Isn't that awesome, right? Mm-hmm. Right. And same thing with, say, Pinterest or Facebook or any of these kind of platforms. If you get in early, right, and you establish yourself as a platform, as an authority kind of in that space, then as the platform grows, so does your traffic grow. That's why it's important to get onto some of these newer platforms that might seem small now, because in 5 years' time they will become huge, massive platforms. So that's the idea of kind of riding the exponential curve, right? So often with a lot of these platforms, there's kind of a trust algorithm that's built in. So, for example, for YouTube, right? If you become a very, very highly ranked video in YouTube, then you have millions and millions of views. You have lots and lots of likes. You've got lots and lots of comments. All these things, and obviously you've got an engaging video. People are watching your video, and what happens is that signals to YouTube and its algorithms, hey, there's a lot of trust behind this thing. People are engaged, and over time, getting in early and having a piece of content that's really engaging over a long period of time becomes an asset. It becomes almost like that first mover advantage, where that you establish yourself, and that asset that you build becomes more valuable sort of over time. And particularly getting in early on a lot of these emerging platforms, there is that kind of early mover advantage. It doesn't mean you need to be the first person on the block. No, it doesn't, because you can look at it, well, if in my market or in my niche, if there isn't really a lot of people producing this quality content, this stuff that we just talked about, right? If I'm that person that's doing that, and I'm putting out lots of content on high quality kind of content, then it's effectively, I am the first mover in that market. And if I'm doing, and if I'm answering all these kind of different questions in my market, and I've written down all the questions that people are asking, and I've produced bits of content around that, then those things won't have a lot of competition. My content will be super engaging, and my content will be everywhere. My content will be on all these different platforms. And as all those platforms, they grow exponentially over time, as they grow and more people come on the internet, then my traffic kind of grows. So that is why distribution is super important, right? Is that if you just limited yourself to just putting your content on your website, you're going to miss out on all that exponential growth, and this is where all the traffic is. Now, you may need to funnel them to your website. That's another kind of discussion, but that's why it's important to be everywhere.
So and that's a great answer. Now, let's just leverage off the last thing you said there, and that is, getting them to your website or getting them to do something, right? So this brings us to the monetization question. That's a mouthful. You're creating this content, and it's not because you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, there's a business case for it, and the business case is to generate more new leads and customers for your business. So, what are some of your tips for monetizing content effectively?
Okay, so I think fundamentally everyone needs to be in the business of building a list. I've seen so many platforms sort of come and go, and running a software which produces software that in the SEO market, I've seen algorithms come and algorithms kind of go, right? And ultimately, if you are playing in someone else's playground, whether it's YouTube or Google, someone else owns that kind of platform, then you're all that needs to happen is they need to change an algorithm, or they need to change, or cancel your account or something like that, and you've lost all that kind of work and all that kind of benefit. So the ultimate asset I think that every business person needs to build is their own email list. Like, that email list is the thing that you own, that you control. They could take away everything from you. And again, this is speaking from, myself and Derek have been around for a while, right? We've seen things come and go. The thing that we keep going back to is your list, right? So I think definitely part of any sort of content marketing strategy is how do you leverage that content to basically build an email subscriber list. I mean, there's lots of other things you can do as well, but I think fundamentally that is, you should be trying to work that into your strategy somewhere. So I think different ways to kind of do that, I think is, part of producing content is to deliver on the promise, but effectively direct them somewhere else if they want more information is one way to do this. And to say, hey, if you like this video, or like this article, or or whatever it is, go to my website for more information. And when they go to the website, there's some kind of opt-in process or some kind of way to basically get people's email address. Once you've got their email address, then you can obviously put them into some kind of engagement or marketing sequence to monetize them. So that's probably in terms of overall general advice, that's kind of where I'd push them. There are a lot of different business models around sort of content marketing, but probably for the people on listening to this podcast, that's probably what I would recommend.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree. Is especially when you're drawing cold people in, going straight for the sell is probably not always the best bet. You want to grab that email address first. So I think that's really valuable advice. Now we're running out of time here, and so I want to turn our attention to and just talk briefly about the solution that you've created. And again, my podcasts aren't about pitching software and stuff like this, but I love the solution that you've created, which I think will take a lot of the pain out of creating content across numerous different mediums. So, give us the 60-second overview of Content Samurai and how people can leverage that to make this entire process easier.
Okay, so Content Samurai basically is software that we wrote, basically solve our own problems, which was we were doing a lot of videos and doing a lot of sales videos, and we were just sick of spending all this time and money creating videos. When we worked at when we saw that a lot of it can be automated effectively, a lot of the grunt work and things, we found ourselves making. Spending a lot of time picking images and creating slides and all that sort of stuff that we talked about earlier. And so we decided to automate it. So what Content Samurai is basically allows you to go from an article to a video in a very, very short amount of time. For a lot of people, that can be 15 minutes or half an hour, but go to really nice, professional looking and sounding video in a very, very short amount of time with just, with a little bit of interaction. So basically, Content Samurai, what you do is you put in your article as text, and then we'll take that article and we'll break that up and create a slide deck for you. And there's all these different layouts and things that you can kind of choose. And then what we've done is we've made it really easy for you to find really, really great images for these slides. So we integrate with all the, with Flickr and Google Images and stuff. And it's just really, really simple. You can go in there and quickly find images for your presentation, and you can mark it up and make it look really pretty, really, really fast. Then one of the things that's really annoying if you've ever done any of this sort of stuff before is recording audio, because if you try and record something and you mess it up, then you have to kind of stop and fix it up and edit the audio and all that kind of stuff. So what we've done is we've built the audio recording into Content Samurai. So we record audio at one sentence at a time. So it means if you mess up the sentence, you just re-record that sentence, and there's no editing or anything that you kind of need to do. So you basically go through and then just record each sentence in your article. So you've got your audio, boom, right? And then we've actually got this kind of crazy technology that does that if you've ever done any of this video stuff yourself, you spend a lot of time sort of timing like your slide, changing from slide 1 to slide 2 at the right time, that kind of stuff. That's really, really annoying to do. So we have got this voice recognition algorithm that'll actually listen to you speak, and because it's got the text, and then automatically aligns the audio and the video and the slides to the script. So that just, again, that saves hours of time doing that, and then we generate a video from that kind of input. And so it's kind of this 5-step process. But again, you can just put article sort of in the input, and the output is an awesome video.
And I just want to throw something in there. And again, my podcasts aren't a sales pitch, but when I see a tool that I like, I gotta throw a plug in there for it. And one of the things I said to you that I just want to share with the listeners here before we actually started this podcast was one of the things that I was absolutely blown away by with this piece of software is I went in there and created a video without taking one of my articles, and it's an existing article off my website, plugged it in, created a video, and I didn't have to read one help document. I didn't have to watch one training video. It was so intuitive. And, the fact is, guys, I'm always looking for ways to effectively get more time back. I mean, if there's one thing as an entrepreneur, particularly if you're a small business owner, that is a truly, finite resource, that's time. And time has a lot of value to it. So if I can find a tool that's going to save me an hour a week, 2 hours a week, 4 hours a week, whatever that is, that has real tangible value to me. And this allows you to convert existing content to video at a rate that there's no other way to do it that is as quick and painless as this. So again, I think if it's something that you're going down that road of content marketing, and if you have a bunch of existing articles and blog posts on your website, that's the place to start. You can take these and start plugging them into a tool like into Content Samurai and start creating these video articles quite quickly. And, when I was looking at this tool, it was one of those tools I looked at and went, you know what? I could teach somebody how to do this for me. So I could take one of my, my team of contractors, and I could have them doing this for me as well. So, I think it's a great tool to start capitalizing on this, on content marketing, distributing across multiple platforms, which I see a lot of people not doing effectively. So, anyway, Eugene, there's my my plug for Content Samurai, because I see huge value there. And on that note, again, Eugene, I just want to say thank you for spending time here. And again, if people want to actually get more information, what's the best URL to go to?
Just contentsamurai.com. If you want to find more information about Content Samurai, I've got a video there. On the homepage, it'll sort of walk you through sort of what it does and how it works.
Fantastic. And Noble Samurai as well, they can see all the products you've developed as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah. So Noble, Noble, samurai.com. So Eugene, thank you very much for your time today.
My absolute pleasure, Derek.
Fantastic. All right, everybody. Again, that was definitely an information-packed episode. Lots of strategies you can take away there to start leveraging content marketing, but also optimizing your time and how effectively you're doing it, and getting the most out of the time you're putting into creating content. And again, as per usual, any of the URLs that we mentioned here will be included in the show notes on entrepreneurignited.com/podcast. And I want to thank you very much for your time today. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a rating on iTunes or on SoundCloud. And thank you very much. We will see you in the next episode.
You're listening to the Entrepreneur Ignited podcast, where we aim to simplify online business so you can make more money. Now, here's your host, Gehl.